All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you can see my screen. Yeah. I'm Teodora. I'm part of the UiPath product team. And today I have with me Sorin Vishan, who you already know. And he'll be supporting you in the chat with a couple of questions that you might have during the session. But we'll try to have also a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to post your questions in the chat if the case. If not, we can also discuss at the end of this session. So today's webinar is about using the right KPIs to build a strong business case. And of course, during today's session, there might be just like a couple of remarks about some future plans or about our future roadmap. But please keep in mind this safe harbor aspect, mentioning that some of the things might be subject to change. So not necessarily everything will become reality. Anyway, today we are not trying to make any strong commitments or so, but rather offer a presentation of the existing capabilities as of today. Let's see what will be our focus in this session. So first, we will see how Automation Hub can help you prioritize the most impactful automation opportunities with our out-of-the-box submission paths and a dedicated dashboard for prioritization. Then, if this out-of-the-box solutions are not the best fit for your organization, we'll see how you can customize the assessment and of course a short demo, a list of these options and also a short demo on how you can do that. And next we will move to some real life customization examples. So basically we want to see together how you can apply the customization settings and the options on real life scenarios, such as measuring and tracking soft benefits. Then we'll discuss about the cost avoidance scenario and how you can include that in the benefits expressed in currency. The third scenario will be about computing the net benefits after you gathered some cost information in the detailed assessment. And last but not least, there will be a scenario related to processes that are SOX compliant, and we'll see together how you can gather some additional information even before going into the implementation phase. And then a short recap of the next webinar series, and of course the open Q&A session. So let's start with the prioritization. I'll just start by mentioning that just like my colleague Julia said in the very first webinar about getting started with Automation Hub, in Automation Hub, each automation idea can be considered like an entity on which you keep collecting information during the idea lifecycle. And this information is grouped in a couple of forms that we call in our product assessment. So the first step is to submit an idea, and we have this out-of-the-box submission path that we propose. First, there is the employee-driven path. So you can start with this existing submission point. And this is basically the basic submit idea form, includes a high-level assessment that has basically the scope of allowing you to filter the ideas. So it's just like an overview, getting the very basic information on that process. You filter the ideas and then you move further with filling in a detailed assessment in order to gather more information for the approved candidates. We also propose this step for filling in the cost-benefit analysis in order to get an ROI, but this is an optional step and it can be performed before or after the decision is made. It's up to the organization. And the last step in here is the prioritization, for which we offer this decision pipeline dashboard. So as a parallel with the other submission submission path that we propose, this is the COE driven one. This is recommended for the members of the COE who already know more information about a certain process, and they can directly fill in a detailed assessment. And in this way, they bypass the first approval step. So they fill in the detailed assessment, then there's again the ROI part that can be filled in or not, only when needed, and again the prioritization step. So all the ideas, rather, even if it's from the employee-driven path or COE-driven path, they will all land in this decision pipeline dashboard, which has a couple of KPIs that we propose by default in this assessment. So there's the automation potential, ease of implementation, and some benefits expressed in either hours saved or currency. And these ones will help you to have like a global view of all the items that have reached this step of prioritization. And based on these KPIs, you can take some decisions on which are the best candidates to go next in the implementation phase. So this is just a very like a high level of what we propose in terms of prioritization with the default assessments that we have today in the product. And besides these ones, there's also, maybe you notice, we also have a submission path for the citizen developer automations and one for the change requests. But what we've noticed from our customers is that gathering this submission, these ideas like citizen developer automations or change requests, they have lighter assessments when building a business case. So for the scope of this webinar, we'll focus on these two submission paths. Now, as I mentioned, both of them are out of the box, but if these default assessments that are part of these submission paths do not fit the reality of your organization, then we offer customizations. So let's see a bit what can be done in terms of customizing these assessments, being it the high-level assessment, the detailed, or any assessment that you can find in Automation Hub. But first, I want to list in here and just mention a couple of needs that our customers mentioned. Maybe even ever since 2019 when we launched the product, we constantly heard various needs from our customers with regards to these default assessments that we propose. So first, I think it's probably what we heard most. Is this part the need of fine-tuning the wording and the formulas from the default assessment. So many customers are okay in big lines with the forms that we propose by default, but there are just like a few changes they would like to do either to the language or wording, so that they would get a version of assessment which is suitable for their business users and for the COE members. So this was one of the need that we heard the most. Then the part with the reporting to various stakeholders and to top management, this is of course quite important for the success of the improving the success of the automation program. So our customers mentioned that defining and tracking custom KPIs that are specific to their organization is something they definitely need in Automation Hub. Then we also heard this need about tracking not only RPA opportunities, but also opportunities where other automation technologies are used, right? So now this is possible in Automation Hub, and you can achieve it with the help of branching logic, which is one capability that we will see in a few minutes in action. But basically, once a business case is built, you can have a solution architect who could advise on the best technology to be used for each process. And based on that selection, be it RPA or another technology, you can, as an admin, display an additional set of questions to be answered before implementation. So in this way, you gather some specific, some technology-specific information on that process even before entering the implementation phase. So once this is done, you can consider the product being like a one-stop shop for everything automation related, not only RPA as it was until this point. And then another need mentioned by the customers, the last one in here, is around the federated COE model. So this applies to big organizations that have mature COE teams, which are usually spread in different geographies, and they are led by different persons. So having all this data that needs to be in the same tenant reported at a global level, still you can achieve like supporting this federated COE model by creating assessments per categories. And in this way, each COE has a certain assessment, but still they are all part of the same tenant, and the reporting will be done globally. So these are, yeah, as I mentioned, some needs we heard from the customers. And after analyzing these and also a couple of more, we provided, I would say, wide range of customization settings and options in our product. So basically the whole purpose of customizing assessment is to decide what information you want to collect and when, what data is required for building relevant business cases within your organization, and which KPIs are important to be computed on the collected information. And the ultimate goal would be to reach an accurate reporting by using the relevant KPIs. Then you will be able to do a better prioritization on the items from your automation program. And in the end, I would say that the COE team manages to have the right information, the relevant KPIs, and the reporting would also be very much improved. And in order to obtain that, we have a couple of customization options, such as creating new questions of different types. So we'll see in a second in a product which are the types of questions that we have today. You can group the questions in sections that are relevant to certain areas that you want to be displayed in the form. Then you can create KPIs with custom formulas. So almost like any mathematical formula that you want to include in there can be supported. There are various settings to be applied for the questions and KPIs. These are in terms of visibility, when should the question be visible, at which point in the life cycle, and also to whom. Probably, for example, if there are some sensitive questions or KPIs, maybe cost related, you can decide to only display it to certain type of users. Next, there's also the option to remove some of the UiPath default questions or KPIs. So if there are default questions that you do not need anymore in your assessment, you can easily remove those. Or later on, if this was done by mistake, you can restore them back and add them in any assessment type. There's also the branching logic, which I briefly mentioned before, which allows you to display a certain set of questions depending on an answer that was previously selected by the user who is filling in the assessment. Then the option to customize assessments per business line. So you can define different assessments per business line by using our category structure from Automation Hub. You can also create different assessment versions, and this is quite useful if maybe you had a legacy assessment, then you wanted to do a couple of changes and save it under another version. And of course, you can also move this last point, you can also move in bulk ideas from a certain version to another version. And this is useful when you reach a certain assessment version that is the best fit for your organization, you can move all the ideas that were maybe on an older version to the new one, and have all the KPIs comparable at that point. Okay, so these are just some mentions about the customization options, but now I would like to go directly in our product and see how exactly you can find them and use these options. So let's go in Admin Console in the Customize Assessments part. And in here you can see that I have already created a couple of assessments per categories. The very top level is the all categories. So this means that if an idea is submitted on any category, this is the assessment that the users will see. However, if you have some more specific assessments created for a certain business line, when that category is selected, they will see that specific assessment. And I have in here a couple of them on finance and accounting, sales and marketing, or legal compliance. So I will now go, for example, on the sales and marketing one and navigate to the detailed assessment. And in here, let's have a look at this sales assessment that I have previously prepared in order to see what settings we have in terms of customization. So this is a default assessment proposed by UiPath, but I have added also a section which I need specifically for this sales assessment. I called this section sales and distribution. So I use this create new section option in order to add a new section. I name it sales and distribution, and I can see in here a couple of settings for the visibility, such that I can decide if this section needs to appear in the submission form, if it needs to be visible in the profile sidebar. I can even hide all the questions before the live phase if they're not relevant until that point in the ideal lifecycle, and so on. So I have a couple of visibility settings specific for the entire section. And then there are the questions that I have added in this section. This is a single choice question, but we can see in here what other types of questions we have. So there's the free text with formatting, number, percentage, multiple choice, or even date. So a couple of more question types, and then we have a couple of settings. You can decide if this question should be required, if it will be part of a KPI formula, if it needs some comment section or not, or if you need a pre-fill answer, which means that you can add from this page an answer that will be displayed to all the users. They can change it if they want. If not, that will be the default answer in there. Okay, so this is the first question I added. Then there's a second one, also a single choice. And let's say I want to add another question that will be again a single choice, and I'll say here, does this automation help with increasing the service quality? Okay, I can also add a description if needed, but this question is quite straightforward, so I leave it as is. In terms of variable name, I'll just say here increase quality. This is just a name that is like a short name of the question to be used in the formulas. And I will add to answers yes and no. There's no need to use this question in a KPI, so I will deselect that option. And let's see a bit how branching logic works very quickly on this example. So, for example, I just added the question around does its automation help with increase the service quality? And I want, if they select the answer yes, I want a bit more details around this. So let's say, please detail your answer. And this will be a free text question, or even free text with formatting, which means that you can even add some rich text in there. I'll add detail as the variable name. And in order to link it to the question above, I'll go to the initial question to answer yes. I'll click on this icon, and I will select, I can search for, no, actually I need to just scroll to the question around please detail your answer that I have just created. So now if I scroll again to that question, I'll see this info that this question will stay hidden until the yes option, the yes answer is selected for the question above. So this allows you to basically gather more information on this question. Okay, so just very brief about branching logic. Then you can also create KPIs. So this is the option to create a new KPI. The KPIs can be either number of or percentage type, and you have a couple of formatting options. So it can have from 0 to 2 decimal points depending on how it's needed. And then there's also the units. So depending on what kind of KPI you create, you can select if it is expressed in minutes, hours, days, or even currency. So there's this unit that is will be displayed like a placeholder for that KPI. And then similar settings for visibility, like we already saw at the level of the sections. This is available for questions and KPIs too. And I would also mention the part with the sensitive information. So in case, like I already mentioned, in case there are questions or KPIs which should be visible only to certain users, then you can select one of these options. So for example, if I check view sensitive information from detailed assessment, this means that only the users that have this permission in the roles and permissions page will be able to see this question. And in this way you can hide the information which is maybe a bit sensitive from the other business users. Okay, for the purpose of this demo, I'll just delete this KPI as we don't need it at this point. And looking at other options that we have, so creating questions, creating KPIs, bringing back questions or KPIs from the default assessments. So I have here a wide variety of questions and KPIs from the UiPath default assessments. For example, if I want the question regarding the pain points, that is a free text question, I can simply select it and it will be added in here in my assessment with all the settings and all the details as it is presented in the overview assessment, but we don't need it at this point. And yeah, these are the main settings for customization. And what can we do now that we have added the section and the questions that we need? I can click on save. And usually there are two options. You can decide to save as a new version, or you can update the existing version. Saving as a new version means that a new version will be created by the system, and you can move ideas from one version to another. But this is not always required. You can easily update the existing version if only a couple of changes were done to the wording or no formulas were changed and so on. And there are cases when for major changes that have been performed, only the save as new version option will be available in here. But for now, I'll just select to update the existing version, and I will quickly go in the submit a COE driven idea flow in order to show you what we have created with this sales assessment. So we can see this was done for sales and marketing category. So when a user comes in here and tries to submit an idea, I'll just add some quick mock data. If they select this sales and marketing business area, we'll notice on this navigation part already that there will be a new section added for for the sales and distribution. Give me a second to see if this was not a bit. All right, sorry. So the version that we just edited is the sales and assessment version 2. What we missed to do was to set it live. So in order to see this, the version that we just edited in the submission form, the very important step is to actually set it live. And I have here the consequences saying that all the new ideas will be linked to this version. Okay, so now that the sales assessment is live, I'll just leave this one and open the form once again, such that the page refreshes. And now we'll add again a short automation name, a description, and let's see when we select the sales and marketing category. Yes, this new section that we have added, it was added in here. So the assessment, basically the assessment that we created on the sales assessment was populated in here. So if we go to this section, and you remember that for this question that we created, we added a branching logic. Selecting the yes answer will display an additional question where the users can detail their answer. And then if you go to the no option, there's no additional answer. All right. So now, if you're wondering what happens with the existing pipeline once I have set another version live, well, there are two options. You can decide to keep all the existing ideas as they are on the current versions, case in which they will not be comparable with the automation ideas submitted on the new version. Or there is this must update option that allows you to move, for example, everything that you had on the default assessment, you can move it to the sales assessment, right? And case in which everything will be, all the data will be comparable. What we advise you to do is to first try with a couple of ideas, get familiar with the concept, notice how the new version is applied to the existing ideas, and then decide if this should be something, an action to be done on the entire pipeline or not. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. And now it's time for some, it's time for some real life customization examples. The first one that we propose for today is the one, a scenario for measuring and for tracking the soft benefits. So probably you already noticed that in the default assessments that we have in UiPath Automation Hub, we propose a series of benefits that are numerical or of type percentage. But one can also track soft benefits. So in order to do that, I have this example created in here where I have created a new question of type multiple choice. I have added the soft benefits in the answer options section. And then I have created a couple of questions of type number or percentage in order to gather quantitative data for each benefit. Then you can create a relevant KPI for each answer option. And again, the branching logic will help you to link each answer, which basically represents a soft benefit, with its quantitative data and KPI. Let's see how we can do that. So we go back to this customized assessments area in the product. And now we'll go to the all categories, detailed assessment. And let's just take the version 1 in here. Sorry, version 2, assessment of soft benefits. This is created for this scenario. And in this very first section called automation goal, that was the default name, I have modified the single choice around, which is a primary reason to automate. I have changed it to a multiple choice question. And now the question is select maximum 3 benefits for automating the process. And let's see what answer options we have. We have in here a couple of soft benefits that we considered relevant, but of course, for each organization, you can add the soft benefits that are relevant to you. So it can be either better SLA, you can increase the process efficiency, there's cost reduction, revenue growth, increasing the quality, or even improving the customer satisfaction, right? These are a couple of soft benefits. So the first one, better SLAs, we created in here a couple of questions and we linked it with the branching logic. So if a user selects the answer better SLA, then these two questions will be displayed. Which is the average SLA for the current process? This is a numerical question. And then which is the target SLA for this process after automation? Another numerical question, right? So we gather this information from our users that are filling in the assessment. And then we created this KPI of type percentage called improved SLA rate. We added a variable name and the formula that uses these two questions above in order to find out the rate and how much the SLAs decreased because we automated this process. And this can be done for any of these answers. So, for example, if you take increase process efficiency, we can add a couple of more questions. So just quickly can say which is the average error rate for the current process. This will be a question of type percentage because it's an error rate. And we'll say average error rate as a variable name. And then another question of type percentage, which will be which is the target error rate for the current, actually, which is the target error rate after automating the process. And we'll have here target rate as a variable name. And once we have these two questions, we can add the KPI, which will be again of type percentage. And this will be the error rate that decreased. So which is the error rate decrease? Variable name error rate. And let's see, for the formula, we will add, I have this error that this is already duplicated, so we'll just say error rate KPI. And for the formula, we need the last two questions that we have just created, so which is the average error rate and the target error rate. And the formula will be a simple one. Sorry, I just need to copy the variable name, average error rate minus the target error rate. And in this way, we will see how much the error rate decreased once the process was automated. So now that I have added these additional questions, I can easily save this version, update this existing version, and then save it. And this is how I improve basically this assessment with soft benefits. Okay, the next scenario is around cost avoidance. So it's a quite well-known fact that the accuracy of performing a certain process increases once you automate it. And this enables you to also avoid some additional costs that would occur, for example, during the audit phase with fixing some issues surfaced by the auditors. So therefore, using customizations, you can compute this opportunity cost and then add it to the KPI, which tracks the benefits per company expressed in currency, such that you obtain these total benefits brought by automating the process. So to do that, it's quite simple. You can define a new numerical question in order to capture this the amount of money that you save in 1 year by avoiding the additional work with fixing audit issues, or any other example that you would have in cost avoidance. And then either create a new KPI or adjust the formula for the already existing one if you use it in your assessment in order to reflect this avoided cost. So going back in demo mode, let's discuss about this scenario. I'll just open a default assessment, and looking at these sections and thinking where this question about cost avoidance would make sense, I'll just open the process volumetry section, because in here I have a couple of questions about the task and process frequency, the volumes, the number of employees performing the tasks, and also error rates and rework time. So I will decide to add in here, let's say after the total review audit time, I will add a new question in order to gather this information about the cost avoided. This will definitely be a question of type number, and the unit will be currency because it's money that I save, and I'll select 0 decimal points. This is of course an estimate, so it should be fine to not track it like in such to be such exact numbers. So integer numbers would work. I will add a question: which is the current cost with fixing issues discovered during the audit phase for this process? And if you want to, we can also have a description. Please provide an estimate per year, right? Because the benefits that we compute are also per year. The variable will be cost avoided. All right, and now that I have this question set up, I'll navigate to the assessments KPIs section and find the benefit per company expressed in currency per year. So I have already the formula which takes into account the entire cost per year multiplied by the automation potential, such that you get the benefits over 1 year for automating this process. And I add to this one the cost avoided, the one that I have just created, because I realized that by not paying that amount of money, I'm actually saving this much for this process that I'm automating. So let's save this one. And you see, this is one of the cases that I mentioned. Since I'm adding a new KPI, I'm modifying the KPI of an existing, I'm modifying the formula of an existing KPI. I need to save this as a new version. So I'll say this is version 4, because I already have 2 and 3. So this is version 4 with the default assessment cost avoidance scenario. And of course, in the description, you can add the release notes or any notes relevant to the changes that you have done. So let's save this. And there it is. We can even preview this one. This preview is quite helpful to not go directly in the submission mode. And in this process volumetry section, we will see our additional question around, oh, sorry, this was we saved it as a new version, yeah, the cost avoidance, the V4, so we need to preview this one, not the previous version that was not adjusted. So this is the 4.1 version, and there's the additional question around which is the current cost for fixing the issues discovered during audit. And the help text is displayed like this next to each question to provide an estimate per year. All right. So this was the scenario around the cost avoidance. Now we have two more real-life scenarios. One is for capturing information related to costs. So we have in Automation Hub this cost-benefit analysis section that we propose. That might be too extensive for certain customers, and case in which you can create a smaller set of questions to gather information about the cost directly in assessments. So you can have, for example, a new section for costs in the detailed assessment. You can mark it hidden from submissions if you want to, so that you gather the cost only after submitting the idea. You add some numerical questions to capture the required costs. And then we define KPIs for tracking the net benefit for the first 2 years. So let's go in demo mode and see how we can achieve this. We can remain on the all categories assessment, and let's go to the version 3 with the cost estimates. We'll go in the customization mode. And we have this additional section created, cost estimates, and as I mentioned, I checked the setting to hide it from the submission forms. In here, I created a couple of questions. One, to gather and track the implementation people costs, which is the total amount per year. You can ask your process owners to fill this in order to then find out which are the total costs required for implementation. So first one is the implementation people costs, then what amount of money you need for the software costs each year, and next there is also a question around other running costs, the total amount per year. So only 3 questions instead of the entire cost benefit analysis page that we have in Automation Hub. This might be enough for certain customers. And what do we do with this information? So we need to create some KPIs in order to find out which are the net benefits for year 1 and year 2. Let's say that we track the benefits of this automation over a period of 2 years. So the first KPI, I'll call it net benefits year 1. It will be of type number, and let's say with 0 decimal points. Net benefits year 1. And for the formula, I need to take into account the cost for the process as is, the entire cost, and then the questions that I have just defined for the implementation costs, then the software costs, and also the other running costs. Okay, and our formula will basically subtract from the cost for the entire process per year minus the implementation costs, which you only track in the first year, right, when you implement this automation, minus the software costs and the other running costs that are required to run this automation. And this is the formula for the net benefits for year 1. Now I can add, I can also track a second KPI for year 2 when for year 2 we don't have the implementation costs anymore. So the formula will be just slightly different. Again, KPI of type number, 0 decimal points, and I will add the very same information, but without the implementation costs, which have been already taken into account in the first year. So I'll have the costs for year, from which we subtract the software cost. We'd rather just copy this one. And then we subtract the other running costs. And yeah, this one was not copied with, it's important to keep only capital letters in the formulas because this is how the variable names are tracked. And that's it. Let's go in the preview mode and we can try to quickly fill in an assessment, maybe only the part with the employee profile and process volumetry, but which is relevant, and see how this works. So let's say that the employee is working around 200 days per year, 8 hours per day, and we'll just add a salary for the employee here. And we'll assume that this process is performed on a daily basis with an activity of 100 volumes per employee. Maybe I have around 5 employees performing this task, and let's say 50 minutes per transaction. So all this information will help me to find out which is the cost for the process as is. And now going in the section with the cost estimates, we can add some amounts for the implementation people costs, then some amounts for the software costs for per year, and for the other running costs. It's just orientative data. And in these two KPIs for net benefits for year 1 and year 2, the amount will already be computed by performing the exact calculations as instructed in the formulas. All right, and now let's go to the last real life scenario that we prepared, which is around gathering additional information for SOX compliant processes. So if you have processes that are SOX compliant, you can display additional questions in order to gather some more information already at the stage when you build the business case. So first, we can create a simple yes and no question to find out if the process proposed for automation is SOX compliant. Then we create some additional questions relevant to the SOX law to gather some specific information. And we use the branching logic in order to display those additional questions only if the yes answer was selected to that question. And now going back in demo mode, we'll just cancel these changes. So we go to finance and accounting, accounts payable, invoice to payment. This is a category on which we specifically created this assessment with SOX compliance section. And we'll go in the customization mode. In here, I have added an additional section called SOX compliance information with 3 questions. The first one is the process SOX compliant, and yes, no. And if I go to this branching icon, I can see that if the answer yes is selected, then I will show the system will show 2 additional sections, 2 additional questions around selecting the method used for data protection for this process, and a question to see if the process involves copying data to removable storage devices. Okay, so the branching logic is all set. We can also notice it in here that these questions will only be displayed if the answer yes is selected. So we simply save this one and we updated this version. And now going quickly in the submission mode, we'll make sure to select this category in order to see this assessment that is set live. So we open the submission form for the COE ideas. Okay, and here, of course, we will fill in the name, the description, just like before. And let's see, if we select the finance and accounting invoice to payment subcategory, we have this assessment refreshed and our section for the SOX compliance information. If I selected that yes, this process is SOX compliant, I will get the 2 additional questions around it that the users should be able to easily fill in. And of course, this can be applied to any other policies that you might be interested in. All right. These were the 4 real-life examples that I wanted to present today, and the customization options discussed. Now, a very short mention about the next webinars. As Christina already said, there will be another session in the 23rd of August. This is for communicating the potential of the automation program, and Yulia will present some interesting facts about the integration between Automation Hub and Insights Cloud. And next, we'll have a short break of the webinars because in September there's the Forwards 5 event, then the big release from 22.10 coming up in October. And the webinars will be restarted in early November for another three webinars by the end of this year. And now, not so much time left for Q&A, but I think we can manage. Sorin?
Yeah, so let's start. I captured a couple of questions that you could answer live from Bill. Bill Griffith, measuring and tracking soft benefits. Does this include a way to measure, track employees that now work on tasks that increase revenue collections, etc.? And Bill, if you're still on the call, you can unmute and add details if you want.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think you answered that in showing how you can add those custom columns with numeric responses, because what we get is the cost, cost avoidance, cost savings is one thing, but a lot of times we don't get rid of employees. We put them on other areas where they can then, work on, collecting revenue or increasing revenue, or collecting, debt, increasing revenue. Just to be nice to have a way to show that, instead of it being kind of that soft, kind of being true numbers that you can report on.
Yeah, of course. So this was just an example with the soft benefits, but if you need exact numbers and the formulas and how to build those KPIs that would get you those numbers, the system is quite flexible in order to show that, of course. And again, this information, if it's a bit sensitive, can be displayed only to certain users.
Thank you.
All right. Next from Christopher. When should we start? At what point to consider customizing the assessments?
Well, I think our recommendation is to first analyze the default assessments. There are customers who are very who get along very well with those proposals, but after you start with those assessments, you see which are the KPIs proposed in there. Once you realize that something is not according to the reality of your organization, either if it's wording or formulas or so, you can simply start and try customization. As I mentioned even in the webinar, maybe try only a couple of settings first, see how it looks like, and then decide which is the best moment to roll it out for all the business users or the COE members that will fill in those assessments. But yeah, I think the first point, once you after you have installed the Automation Hub, you check the default assessments, and even if from the start is not a good fit, maybe you can even do it from the very beginning, and then all your ideas gathered from the employees will be on that version of assessment that is customized for your organization.
Cool. Maybe one more from Brandon. Can you build an increase in cost each year? For example, if software costs go up 3% each year?
Can you say that again, please?
Sure, and Brandon, feel free to unmute if you're still on the call. So can you build an increase in cost each year? For example, the software costs go up 3% each year.
So build an increase in the cost. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it all depends on how you set the KPIs. If you know already that there's a certain rate on how much they increase, probably you can already add that in the formula. If not, probably there'll need to be separate KPIs, like the KPI for year 1, the KPI for year 2, and report it according, for each year.
I guess like to kind of highlight, like, can you, and I can play around with it obviously, but for example, like you had software costs, could you just put like times 1.03 or 1.05 or whatever, and then it would change each year?
So yeah, you can increase it like in the formula, but I assume that this would mean that each year you would need to change that factor with which you increase it.
Yeah, true. So I guess you'd have to come back each year and just like do like update that for, like add that in.
Yeah, I think like top of my mind, I think that's the option. But if you want, like if you have a specific case, feel free to write me an email and maybe we can discuss some more.
Sure, thanks.
So I think we're on top of the hour now. Just can we switch screens a bit, please, Teodora, so we can remind them about the upcoming sessions. Okay, so as you've seen, we have one more session coming up from this part of the series, and I will reshare the links to content and the next session in the chat now. So you will have access to all the content that was in the previous 3 sessions, and also the link to register for the 4th session of Automation Hub, communicating the potential of the automation program. And then we will see each other again in autumn, start of November. Thank you everyone for joining. The recording will be up tomorrow and the presentation as well on the event link, which you have here. Please keep these links, copy paste them now, not to lose them. If you want access to content, all you have to do is to be registered to access the content from previous sessions and for the next one. Thank you all, and hope you enjoyed the session today. Thank you, Teodora. Thank you, Sorin.
Thanks, everybody.